Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today I'm excited to welcome back a good friend of mine, Hunter Leese, works for Hodling and Company, and they are the importer of a wonderful and amazing portfolio of whiskeys, one of which happens to be Writer's Tears, an Irish whiskey that really blew my mind last year when we did a deep dive into the brand. It was so good. It was one of those brands that I had seen on the shelves and never given it a chance because it wasn't one of the popular ones. And I think a lot of the members were kind of on the same page where they'd seen it, never tried it. And just about everyone said, wow, there's one in the lineup for everyone to try. And these are fantastic. And it's a must have on your shelf. And of course, they're always innovating. They're always putting out new stuff. And we're excited this year to try the new lineup. Of course, the classics, but also a couple of new expressions that Hunter was able to hook us up with. And of course, the Cask Strength, which is an annual vintage release. So we are super stoked for that. We're expecting a full room, but as we were talking about earlier, everybody's back at work. So those who are not with us right now will catch this recording later. So we will go over the order, so you will be able to follow along as we go. Today, as a surprise, we promised everyone 6 expressions, but everyone should have 7 samples in front of them. We are tasting Copper Pot, Double Oak, Redhead, Single Pot Still, Marsala Cask, Ice Wine Cask, and Cask Strength, and we're going to be tasting them in that order. Super excited for this tasting. I've been missing Writer's Tears, and I'm happy to have everyone here. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I can hop in here, David. I love your background, by the way, looking good over there. You got kind of 3 expressions there that we have tonight. But yeah, again, so I work for Hodling. I manage our Irish portfolio. That includes the Walsh whiskeys, one of which is Writer's Tears we have with us. The Irishman is another. I think we have something on the docket in the future for the Irishman as a tasting, right? Cool. Always. So just to give you guys a sneak peek while we're at it, we have a new pack and a couple new expressions that we'll be tasting at that one. This is a new pack of the Irishman. Looks a lot different, same great liquid, but just to give everybody a quick sneak peek on that one. But yeah, we have a bunch of great expressions with Writer's Tears here. For those of you who don't know more about Walsh whiskey, we do really 2 sides of the portfolio. Writer's Tears being a little bit more contemporary, the Irishman be a little bit more traditional. So with Writer's Tears, we do lots of cast finishes. We also kind of lean more towards, it's a newer style of Irish whiskey that is single pot still. So even in our blends,
okay, there you go.
All right.
Welcome back, Vadim.
It must be
sorry about that.
in that racking house.
Yeah, sorry about that. For those of you who are not aware, I'm in San Simeon, and at the wonderful 2-star hotel I'm staying at, apparently the Wi-Fi is not the greatest in the world. So I do apologize. I'm trying to hotspot off my phone. Hopefully that works a little better. I thought I'd logged in and checked everything, and it was working fine, and we were good with introductions, and then I lost you right when you were doing introduction on the brand, so I apologize about that.
No worries. No worries.
You might want to kill your video for some of it to decrease your bandwidth.
Fair enough. You will see less of me, so you will enjoy this tasting more. Enjoy.
Good stuff. Good to go. I'm assuming, so I'll dive back into it. Again, Copper Pot, it's our tried and true. It's the original expression we had in our portfolio. Again, so everything we do at Walsh Whiskey, whether that's Irishman or Writer's Tears, it's 100% barley. Whether that's malted or unmalted, that comes down to, again, individual expressions. But this one, Copper Pot, is 70% single pot still, 30% single malt, roughly, in that blend. So it is very much more heavy pot still leaning. It spends a minimum 7 years in American bourbon, ex-bourbon casks. So you definitely get some of that bourbon sweetness coming through. But with the exception of the single pot still and the redhead, this is the Copper Pot the basis for every whiskey we'll be trying today. So it starts its life right there, again, minimum 7 years, and then we'll see what all the different cask expressions kind of do to the flavor profile of this whiskey, which is quite interesting. So just, feel free to nose it a little bit. It is at 40% triple distilled, as Irish whiskey typically is, single malt or otherwise. It is almost always triple distilled, called 95%. You're seeing a little bit less of it in some newer distilleries, but that's kind of what you see, and that's distinctive Irish whiskey, is that triple distilled kind of nature, being a little bit smoother, a little bit rounder, and even a little bit more sweetness and less kind of oily texture to it as well. One feature just in Irish whiskey in general, that triple distillation, I always pick up a ton of orchard fruits. And this one, some good green apple, even a bit of ginger too. But as I said, like it definitely being only apples and honey. Honey's that honey sweetness, again, that's why it plays nicely with some of these sweeter cask items we'll get to. Definitely some like kind of fresher notes coming through.
So I always get writer's tears and the Irishman confused. So Irishman tends to be all single malt, and writer's tears is a combination of, it's mostly pot still, right?
Yeah, so writer's tears definitely more pot still bias. So all of our expressions, with the exception of redhead, I'll get to that as far as being, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but like a bit of a redheaded stepchild, if you would, in the portfolio. But with the exception
of those two items, come on.
Yeah, sorry, not to offend anybody. Yeah. So,
any redheads in this group?
You got more than one. Yeah.
We're all over it.
But yeah, fair enough. I'll stay away from that term going forward, rest assured. Yeah, so with the exception of that, it is more, again, about a 70-30 single pot still to single malt blend. So you're going to pick up a lot of that pot still spice. If you've had like a whiskey like Green Spot out there, this reminds me a lot about it. We are about $20 cheaper. Shameless plug, but again, I think profile wise, it kind of sits right in line with those more, again, bourbon cask finish single pot still whiskeys out there, that being probably the most well-known one. Redbreast being a ton of sherry influence and kind of has a different profile as far as single pot still whiskeys go for me. But again, makes for a great mixability. Again, that single pot still spice, that kind of picks up a little bit of that rye spiciness you're going to get in old fashioned if you are making cocktails. But again, it has a little bit more kind of fruit and orchard fruit coming through from that baseline whiskey. Just personally, I love bourbon, I love rye myself, but especially American styles, you have a lot about that, more of that kind of caramelized sugar, more vanilla kind of coming through. And I think that this whiskey kind of helps tone down. With an old fashioned, you're already adding a bit of sugar. So, be a simple syrup. So it just kind of helps balance that out for me personally. So if you want to make a cocktail, I'd suggest that for this, and it goes down pretty nicely as well. Any questions on that copper pot? Cool. So before I jump into, or while I jump into Double Oak, if you guys are ready, no rush, take your time. I'll kind of have a little bit of story time here for a minute. So writer's tears, I know a lot of you have joined us before. But just to kind of refresh where that name comes from. So it's really kind of about, while Irishman more harkens back to the golden age of Irish whiskey, we were pumping out a ton of single malts out of the country. Writer's tears really harkens back to the golden age of Irish literature. And what that coincides with is really kind of when pot still whiskey was really popular, and you find a lot of blends that were really similar to what you'd be getting in copper pot down at your local watering hole. So writers like James Joyce, George Bernard Shaw, Bram Stoker, you can throw in there. A lot of people don't realize he's Irish, but really the two main ones we draw a lot of inspiration from is James Joyce and George Bernard Shaw, with James Joyce being the quote on the back on the front of the label. There, it's out of Finnegan's Wake, not one of his best poems, but it is a fun piece of literature that we, get to include on our label. So. We draw inspiration from them. When they go down to the local watering hole, they'd have writer's block. They would kind of go down there to do some people watching, get some inspiration, see what's going on, and also get a couple drams in them, get the creative juices flowing as well. And so that's kind of where we draw our name from. it was said that when they'd have a breakthrough, that in their whiskey glasses were empty, that hopefully we'll like to think of that they're tears of joy, but that they would cry tears of whiskey back in their empty glasses, and therefore refill their own glass with whiskey. So that's kind of where the writer's tears names come from. It's kind of that distillation of whiskey through their enjoyment at a local pub. So while we move forward, we're just going to get started on double oak. So this was here in the U.S. our first expression after Copper Pot. I talked a bit about Whiskey Advocate earlier. This was actually a 94 pointer back in 2019, and it was their first Irish whiskey to actually break the top 10 on their top 20 of the year. It's very unique as far as like Irish whiskeys go, I would say, from a taste profile sense. You don't see a lot of other Irish whiskeys finish in cognac casks. So what we do is we take that Copper Pot, the same whiskey we had before, and then for an extra 12 months, we put into first fill XO cognac cask from the Legaret family over in France. It's a great partnership. It's really high end, like, $250, $300 XO cognac. And it just imparts a really interesting character to this. It takes some of that more orchard fruit and orchard sweetness, and it turns it more to this kind of dark fruit, almost plum, pressed grapes. But it's just a little, and at that higher 46%, being not chill filtered, it has a little bit more texture to it. Again, it just comes off as just a really lovely sipper. Vadim and I have talked about this countless time, trading messages about how we both find ourselves, no matter what expressions in the writer's tears portfolio, whether that be Japanese or some other, more richer expressions. This one's kind of the go-to. I do find myself picking this one up most whenever I have it at home, and it's just a really lovely dram as well.
I remember last time we tasted it, this one stood out as my favorite from everything we tasted last time, just that how easily drinkable it was. And it started my rabbit hole journey at looking for whiskeys aged in cognac casks, because this opened my eyes to a whole different finishing category that I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we were in the office yesterday, and we're just, if you know anything else in our portfolio, we also make Hirsch bourbon out of, we make several expressions, some out of Indiana, some out of Kentucky, but we just finished that in a cognac barrel. So we're kind of doing them side to side, and it's fun to see the juxtaposition of those two, again, totally different whiskeys in some really fine cognac casks, and kind of do the comparison. I think ours is a little bit more easy drinking. Theirs is definitely a little punchier, but again, I just think this one, for the flavor profile, start to finish, it just has a really beautiful kind of profile to it. I tend to drink it neat as well. I could, if you guys are interested in cocktail recipes, I could also send you some things for this. But again, for me, I just think this drinks really nicely neat, or just with a bit of ice. It is non-chill filtered, so if you do chill it down, you might see a little bit of milkiness, a little bit of that kind of sediment drop out. But that's to be expected, and it kind of shows part of the process in there as well.
I first heard of Writer's Tears watching a show, Somebody Feed Phil. Phil Rosenthal travels around the world. It's on Netflix, and it was a Dublin one. And they show the different ones, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And then I happened to see it at the local liquor store like 2 months later, and I remember it was the regular and the double oak. And the double oak was like, and I was buying it as a gift for my parents, and the double oak was like $5 more or 10, like some amount that was not very significant. And I was like, man, double, so seems like a deal. And I just remember being, because it's not very expensive. No, if I remember,
it's typically under $60.
Yeah. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it really, and every time I revisit it, I'm reminded of sort of that first time, because it is unique in a good way. And I find Irish whiskey in general to be very, very drinkable. It goes down super easy, but Writer's here tends to have a little bit of complexity at the same time, but it still is just like, all right. Like, I was texting with somebody about it. They're like, oh, do you go back and forth? I was like, in theory, but I don't really have the self-control. So I just sort of like knock them all out along the way. And especially when it's something like this. I mean, I'd like to pretend I could go back and forth between this and the ice wine finish, but there's no way this is lasting to number 6. I mean, I'll be real.
Yeah, it's
good.
still one of my favorite expressions that we do. We have a lot of stuff going on. I appreciate that, by the way. It just is of such quality that and especially for the price. One thing, just you brought up, how it's relatively affordable. In general, you look at some of the things we're doing, especially amongst Irish whiskeys like ourselves and others, but we're highly undervalued in the market out there. As far as even when you look at age statement whiskeys, things like that, pound for pound, I think we hit way above our weight class as far as our value for the money, just as a general category. And this is
I mean, I think I've always loved Irish whiskey, but you have a whole lot of bourbon friends who don't appreciate it because it's subtle and nuanced and light, and they want a little more heft to it. And double oaked is the one I always send them to, because it does get that barrel impact, some tannin, some oomph behind it. And didn't, it added 6 points of proof, but drinks like a lot older whiskey because of that impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, one thing that we don't put age statements on any of our writers' tiers. I don't know, we will. We do a bunch of age statements with the Irishman, but again, this whiskey is minimum 8 years old. You don't really see that a lot, even amongst bourbons out there. So there's a definite maturity to it, and you're definitely picking up some of those cask influences. And again, I'm with you. I definitely show this to more of my bourbon friends when they, because punchier whiskeys is what a lot of people want now, and this definitely, I think, has that in spades as well. Okay. Oh, there we go. Thank you for the help on that order there. And just as a kind of, I forgot to mention this when we were tasting Copper Pot, apologies, but just keep that, like, if you have a little bit left, keep that kind of back burner. The cask strength is Copper Pot, just in cask strength form. It's no different as far as the actual composition of the whiskey. Cask strength it is like our hand-picked barrels for that year of what we think the best ones are. But again, that core blend, that core finish, it's all the same, just at cask strength. And you'll just be able to tell how much different those whiskeys taste from just kind of doing a comparison between the two.
Your cask strengths are annual releases. So how does 2020 differ from 2021?
It's about a point different in alcohol, and also just location of the barrel in the racking house is going to be changed every year. It's really what Bernard decides is kind of his preferred blend for that year. So for me, we're on which vintage do you guys have? Is it 2021 or 2020?
21.
21. Good. All right. So that's the most recent one. I think this one has a little bit more ginger to it. Personally, I think it's a little bit more bolder than the 2020. The 2020 has a little bit more of a grassy note, a little bit more kind of that bigger orchard fruit in the front. And I think this one just has a little bit more of that spice, a little bit more of that kind of gingery sweetness coming through for that cask strength, personally. So there's slightly difference. It's going to be like, as far as year to year, you're going to get kind of those same notes, but highlighted in different ways throughout the years. It's kind of the best way to describe that year to year.
Thanks.
So again, are you guys ready to move on just to the next little guy? We'll get the redhead here. So this is the odd man out here, again, to get away from the previous statement. So this is redhead. This was actually our first innovation in the Writers' Tiers portfolio internationally. What we'll be doing is we'll be getting it probably the second half of this calendar year for the first time in the US. So while it's our second expression, is pretty much snatched up within Ireland and also the EU. And this will be the first year that's being made available to us. So you guys have a little bit of a sneak peek to it. So again, it's not a whiskey that's available here yet, but come September, October, you'll be able to buy it in stores. But this being the first expression, it kind of wasn't clear that Writers' Tiers was going to be a single pot still kind of forward whiskey. So that's kind of how this one ends up being 100% Irish single malt. One thing again, it's some of our like most beautiful like stock coming from I think our single malt portfolio, but I'm a sucker for sherry cask too. So one thing about this, it is 100% Irish single malt. It's also finished for at least 1 year in first fill Oloroso sherry cask, and you pick up a lot of that sherry kind of nose on there. Again, being a sucker for sherry casks and sherry bombs, this kind of scratches that itch without being over the top. You get some more of those, again, kind of dried fruit notes coming through, especially from that, again, just general sherry flavor profile, those beautiful Oloroso barrels. And I also really like what Oloroso adds as opposed to PX. Again, I love PX as well, Pedro Jimenez, for those of you who don't know, but that is, again, a kind of, you get a little bit more color extraction. You definitely get a little bit more of a punchy whiskey. I think given the fact that this is an Irish single malt and the fact that it is triple distilled, the Oloroso just kind of plays really nicely. It's not overpowering. You still get the core base of the spirit coming through there, but you get those lovely sherry undertones, especially through the finish as well. And this is at that 46% as well. So Copper Pot is the only one that we do that is 40% in the portfolio. It also, so one thing that the sherry butts do is they do also give it this more kind of red hue, hence the redhead. Again, that's kind of where the name comes from. With the, you can set aside the part that Irish heritage and redheads and those things kind of go hand in hand. That's definitely a piece of it, but it definitely, again, given the color of this whiskey, it also has some of that kind of red hues that you get from the sherry barrels. Something I hadn't picked up previously, but something I'm getting now, I don't know if it's this glass, but I get a little bit of orange peel in there as well. A little bit more of that kind of different citrus, which if you get Irish whiskey, you get a lot of orchard fruit. This one I'm picking up a ton of more citrus and especially like orange, even a pithy rind kind of coming through on the nose without being really bitter. Just I pick up a little bit of that orange.
A little marmalade.
Yeah, there you go. And you also get some of that barrel. You get some of that European oak coming through too on there versus kind of that really sweet, more caramelized kind of American oak. You definitely get a little bit more of that kind of just almost like European wine cask influence that I'm picking up. A little bit creamier. So again, this is the only single malt we'll probably ever do for this portfolio, being very heavy towards the pot still influence, pot still side. This is, again, a bit more of a unicorn in the portfolio. You'll see this at limited outlets every year, just because it is a little bit smaller production, it is a bit kind of more set aside for because of the fact that it is single malt. You'll see it in, again, pretty much only our top retailers from here on out, but you will be able to find it starting this year, thankfully. So. As far as price point goes, that's about that kind of $70 price point. So just a step above the double oak. Yes, we'll make sure we get some down in LA, Jane. No problem. Citron and mandarin. There you go. Love it. So
the redhead is very nice. And,
yeah,
and it's not just because I'm a redhead. I just want you to know.
Thanks for that. No, it is, again, it is very lovely. It's one of our favorite expressions. We've been clamoring for it for the last few years as far as how we can get enough stock for us to actually be able to do something with it in the US, and this will be finally the first year that we're able to do so. Again, you won't see it there for probably another 3 or 4 months. But this is just a bit of a sneak peek. We did ship 700 milliliter bottles, which will be coming in 750s, but just to give you guys something special that you probably hopefully never had before. If you've been to Ireland, you may have, but yeah, in the US at least, this will be kind of the first rollout of it.
And Hunter, do you say this is going to be an annual release that'll be available?
Yeah, we'll have an annual allocation here. It's actually going to be quite a bit more than most of our other releases. It will be a little bit wider just because it already has a bit of a name behind it. But we'll get about 900 cases total here this year in the US.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see about next year. Hopefully 1,000. Maybe we'll start to grow that a little bit, but that's it'll be probably about that release every year, which would be, as far as like our cast strength, even our single pot still, which is pretty limited, one of our larger kind of limited releases here in the US. So this is a lovely whiskey.
These have all been great.
Yeah. Again, one thing, Bernard, he was just here earlier this week, Bernard Walsh. One thing why their whiskeys come out so good is because he ends up tasting whiskey every Friday just to see what's coming through and what he wants to taste through. He's very much an innovator. If you don't know his background, most people don't, but so Walsh Whiskey started back in 1999. This was before, really at that point, there were, I guess, 3 Irish whiskey distilleries. Now there's over 32 that are currently actually producing whiskey, and it'll soon be 40. So this was way before any of that happened. He was kind of an innovator back in those days. He went down to Irish distillers down in Cork, studied at the Middleton Distillery underneath all those master distillers, and kind of learned everything he knew from all those guys when they were still fighting to keep Irish whiskey as kind of an identity alive. Back then, that was less than 1% of total global consumption of actual whiskey was Irish whiskey back in 1999. You had Middleton or Irish distillers down in Cork. You had Bushmills up in Northern Ireland, and then you had the Cooley Distillery, which is Connemara and Kilbeggan. Those two come out of there, but that was it. Fast forward to really 2012 is when really people started to build a lot more Irish whiskey distilleries. Dingle, which is also in our portfolio, and hopefully we'll do it at some point down the road. They were about the 5th distillery built in Ireland, active these days. And again, as I mentioned, between 2012 and now, it's gone from about 5 to 32 actually producing whiskey. So that's one thing that we're really fortunate to have, is actually well-aged Irish spirit. There's a lot of great producers out there, a lot of great independent producers coming to the States these days. But again, a lot of them are still pretty early in their career. We're getting a lot of 3- and 4-year-old spirits out of those places. I think we just have a little bit more maturity, a little bit more balance to our whiskeys these days than some of those folks. Not to say they don't do a great job, but again, we have a little bit of pedigree and a little bit of heritage behind us as well. Any to the Florida Panhandle. Is that for Dingle? Is that for everything in general, Tony?
Probably everything in general, but I was looking like for the redhead. The Dingle I found, I think it was batch 4.
Sure.
Yeah. And I do have a batch 5 as well. I have 3, 4, and 5 as a matter of fact.
No kidding. Well, those are all great whiskeys as well. But we do get out to the Florida Panhandle. We'll get some redhead down there as well, in limited quantities in addition. But everything pretty much, Florida is one of our biggest markets. We get everything out. It's a lot of ABC, Winn-Dixie, and Publix. You can usually find the core SKUs, but when it comes to kind of some of our innovations, redhead, things like that, probably more whiskey shops and things like that, you'll find it more prevalent in. But ABC, we do have a few more limited expressions, and that'd be the place to find more widespread some things.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Everybody doing all right? Enjoying your time? Enjoying the whiskeys, hopefully? Good stuff. Well, Vadim, we'll do one more whiskey and then we'll pause. The single pots will kind of round out our general core before we kind of move into some of the cast expressions. So I don't know if you wanted to do a poll at that point, but I always like to see the results. But we'll kind of maybe take a pause there to see what people think so far before we get into some of the cast finishes and cast strength whiskey. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
All righty. All right, so moving on, single pot still. This is for me really special whiskey. It's also the first whiskey that we've made that's not coming out of Middleton Distillery. We're getting out of Great Northern, but over the next few years of this whiskey, it'll vary as far as where the actual production is. So we have a bunch of different barrels laying down right now from a variety of different distilleries across Ireland. And one thing that, again, being a sucker for some sherry casks, this is aged in both PX and Marsala first fill casks, as far as when it's finished in. And this is also our newest expression. So while Redhead's been out in the market for a number of years, single pot still, it just released for the first time in this last fall in Ireland as an exclusive. We'll get the kind of the first shot at the second batch, and that'll be arriving sometime between, just the logistics are crazy right now, so it's kind of hard to put a finger on, but sometime around holidays into St. Patrick's Day next year. And this will also be an annual release that over time we're scaling to be part of the core whiskeys. So hopefully this will be kind of an all year round available whiskey, but for now it's going to be probably an early around, holidays to St. Patrick's Day release. And again, being really single pot still forward, this is kind of, for me, the culmination of our portfolio. It really speaks to what we're about, and also I think it's like one of the best whiskeys we're making right now, just personally. It just has that really lovely pot still spice. You get a little bit more of that kind of PX cask coming in there, a little bit bolder of that cask. Plus, you get kind of balanced with that Marsala cask sweetness coming on the back end as well. And since I've gotten a bottle of this in house, I'll change my answer. I find myself going back to this one even more than Double Oak. I'm a sucker for not only sherry cask but also pot still whiskey. It just has a really nice spice to it. And again, it's kind of the culmination of what we're trying to do as far as being more pot still forward. This is kind of the full single pot still experience in a glass, and I think it comes across really nicely. Being non-chill filtered, being that higher proof as well, just really helps to give it a little bit more legs to it. As far as tasting notes go, again, I definitely pick up a lot of that spice right in the nose. I don't know if you guys are getting that as well, but yeah, someone said brown sugar, a little bit of coffee. That's fair too. I almost get like a fruitiness coffee, like if you had like really, lightly roasted third wave coffee, but definitely some more of that decadence coming through, and that's a lot of that PX cask kind of showing its face there. But again, this will be something that hopefully in the coming years we'll have this kind of year-round opportunity to be able to pick it up. So. Pot still, for those of you who don't know, I'll talk a little bit about this as well. It is really the Irish whiskey. So it's uniquely Irish in the sense that you can't produce it anywhere else except for the island of Ireland, unless you're faking it or doing it illegally. But what it came from is late 1700s. I'm going to get the date wrong, but call it 1782 roughly. There was a tax that was imposed by the Brits on the Irish nation. Really, when it comes down to, just kind of sidebar here real quickly, when it comes down to Irish whiskey and Irish people in general, a lot of things were really created out of the fact that what the Brits were taxing them on, they were trying to get away from. It's kind of the original inspiration behind a lot of these pubs. Sheebing, where people were actually making poaching just on a stove, and the tax man would come around, knock on the door, looking for people who were violating it. So there's lots of, again, issues kind of enforcing tax laws and things like that in Ireland. And one of the things they did was they started taxing then the production as opposed to the consumption when it actually gets to the consumer. And one of the ways they did that was just by taxing the malt. So before you even left the whiskey, they're taxing a lot on what's actually being coming through the country in malted barley, because malted barley was really being used for the production of whiskey and poaching in those days. And so again, late 1700s, the Brits imposed this tax on malted barley. So it was really just only on malted barley, since a lot of that was coming from the rest of the British Isles. And they're, Irish always trying to get around the taxes. they started introducing unmalted barley into their mix, into their blend, into their mash bill. So that's kind of where single pot still was born. It's a blend of malted and unmalted barley. You'll see pretty soon a little bit more identification characteristics legally coming behind that. But for right now, it has to be at least 1/3 malted barley, 1/3 unmalted barley, and you can use up to 5% of another grain. That other grain typically tends to be oats right now, but there's again going to be a little bit more room for distillers to play with it coming in the next couple months, maybe the next year, really. So that's being rehashed by the Irish Whiskey Association, but for now it's kind of that minimum quantity. Vadim, did you have a question?
Yeah, and you said the finish on this is PX and Marsala. Is that a
Yeah.
finish? Is that a marriage? Is that a double finish? Like how are you getting both of those?
Yeah, so this spends again about 7 years in bourbon barrels as well, like the copper pot, and then it's finished 50. It's about 60-40 PX to Marsala casks on that, and that's another 12 months of aging on there.
And then married back together.
Married back together, correct? Yes. Yeah, that and then married back together. And this whiskey itself, again, I mentioned it's the first one not to come from Middleton. We're getting this from Great Northern, is where that whiskey is coming from.
Yeah, I remember when I was reading on this on the bottle, I thought it was the perfect kind of middle spot between Redhead and Marsala cask because it kind of combines the sherry and the Marsala. Although
Yeah,
it's a
it makes
different
for
type
a
of
nice
sherry, but
bridge,
yeah,
for sure.
And those would be the core four, right? So those would be 1, 2, 3, 4 in the portfolio.
Yep. I mean, technically, so we've started calling our whiskeys chapters, and we name those chapters after the order they've come out globally. So number 1 being Copper Pot, number 2 being Redhead, and number 3 being Double Oak as far as our innovations go. Technically, this is chapter 10, but as far as our like round out of our core portfolio, this would be the 4th. You can tell just because it has the walnut cap on here. There's no metal ring. I'm sure you've seen with the Japanese cask, see with the Marsala cask and the cask strength. There's a walnut cap with like the more bronze ring around it. Those are kind of more limited allocated items out there.
Very cool.
I talked to their finance guy a lot, and he's like, "We can't put that cap on capsule on every whiskey. It's way too expensive. It is real metal. It's got the nice medallion on the top, and it is a real walnut wood." So
Wait, my Marsala didn't have a fancy cap.
yeah, the screw cap on there.
Yeah.
So that was the So that would have been from the 2020 vintage.
Well, go figure.
Taste profile wise, it won't change really anything. It's again pretty consistent year to year in that Marsala cask. Still from Florio Winery down in Sicily as well. So same barrels, same production, just different packaging, different capsule.
So it'll taste a little worse because you have the cheap packaging. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, this is trash now.
Isn't it always?
To be
after
fair, what's that?
I said all the packaging is trash when you're done drinking it.
That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, I know you guys. I don't know if you've given a little bit of time, gotten a little bit of air to it, but I'm also getting a little bit more toffee coming through. I think someone said that earlier. Maybe it was the coffee that I'm thinking of, but cocoa powder, definitely again a bit of that kind of more desserty decadence, a little bit kind of that more unctuousness from there. 1785
Play-Doh.
What's that?
In my head, it's coming together as Play-Doh, and I think it's like the mustiness from the sherry with the like sweet and the vanilla, and it just kind of comes together to create this little Play-Doh taste.
Fair enough. Well, hopefully that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
I get more aristocracies, but that's just me.
1785. I was about 3 years off, I think. Jason, right?
Close.
1782.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the English. They imposed a new tax every year, so you're going to be close regardless.
Fair enough. But yeah, that was when single apostle was created. Really shortly after that. Before that, again, I talked about kind of the golden age of Irish whiskey before. And that's what we harken back to with the Irishman. That was really pre 1785. After that, really single malt became the realm of the Scots. All right, you guys, do we want to do that quick poll? There they go. Way ahead of me. So yeah, just I'm curious to see what you guys think, what your guys' favorites are. If there's anything else, any questions you guys have so far, please let me know. We've kind of run again a good breadth of what Irish whiskey kind of encompasses as well. So.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I would say that, you know, the last three are all unique and delicious. Hard to choose between. I think I would take a bottle of each and be quite happy.
I'm glad to hear that. Thanks, Shane. That's awesome. Just making sure I have my ducks in a row over here.
I think with these four expressions, Hunter, they really do kind of typify a very nice Irish whiskey. I really am leaning towards one, probably not the one that's going to be the preferred or the favorite, because so one thing I really enjoy about Irish whiskeys is some of the noses on them are so just beautiful, and then you get and I like it when you get a lot more of a connection with the nose and the palate, and so there's one, I think, a couple of them that do that really, really well. But I second all of those comments that I would be happy with any one of these.
So you're like, I'm sitting here waiting for you to tell me which one was your favorite.
Is the poll all done, Vadim?
Yep. Yes, sir. We just closed it.
Double Oak is the one
Okay.
I really like.
That's a good choice.
Interesting. And I got a message from someone in the group who wasn't able to vote, and their favorite was Redhead. And I'm going to reveal the results right now. It's literally tied Double Oak, Redhead, and Single Pot.
Wow.
So the answer, I'll take any one of these, is pretty much the right answer.
So just given the breakdown, I think if I probably shouldn't have voted, but I did vote for Single Pot still, just as a disclaimer. So across the group, it looks like it's pretty even, especially if you pull me out.
Yeah, just as long as it's not 40%, we're all happy to go.
Yeah. Jane, which one did you vote for?
Redhead.
Okay.
Interesting point that it's not written as Redhead as like a redhead. It's two separate words on the label, Redhead. So that was something I had to correct when I was doing the labels.
So that also happens with the ice wine cask, because depending on what country that you're in, it's either one or two words as well. So I'll get this wrong, but I believe Canada, it's one word. Germany, it's one word. The US, it's two words. Even in the translation, obviously. But I could be, if it's not that, it's the opposite. But anyways, we'll get there.
You know, in Germany, it's one word, right? German takes words and they slam them all together and they make it one word. So.
It's everything.
Yeah, but it's probably 12
right?
feet long.
You keep on bolting on adjectives and what have you. And yeah, you can get some 26, 27, 30 letter words out there. For sure.
But you know, this is when, our English is based in German, because ice wine is the same in German. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. Although again, for some reason in the US, we break it into two words.
So the poll brings up a question I have. If you look at the poll results, it would make it seem like the copper pot is this awful, horrible thing, and it's not. But it is. You all have created a weird kind of scenario where you're creating these premium ones that only cost like $5-10 sometimes more than your standard offering, and then it's like, well, where does who are you pitching your standard offering to when the upgrade charge is so little?
Fair point. To be totally honest, I mean, these aren't typically found all together. I mean, copper pot is pretty ubiquitous. Like we're in a lot of chains, we're in Publix, we're in things like that, where, Bevmo, Total Wine, Albertsons, Vons Pavilions, you can pick up copper pot at. Double oak is something we're hoping to get to that point, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I hope to have that problem someday where people are trading up and buying a lot more redhead and double oak and single pot still than copper pot. But that's just, again, given most consumers these days, when it comes to Irish whiskey, they don't understand that they're not necessarily willing to pay more than $50 for a bottle. The general consumer, it's just not. And they think Jameson, they think Tully, they think all those, and copper pot's already a trade up from that. So we're working on it though.
But Jason, I think there's plenty of folks who like the softer flavors, and I think copper pot, gives you that, which is a lot of Irish whiskeys give you that softer flavor, and then the other ones, the ones that we like, we're the whiskey drinkers, right? It makes sense. We like the different flavors and the different nuances. I think it makes sense from a whiskey club that we would go for these other ones.
Yeah, when it first came out, I always described it as it was premium Jameson. And that's how I told my friends to try and explain why I was willing, instead of spending $25 and getting, the green bottle, why I spent a little bit more and got this. And I said, because it's better. It's got more flavor. It's got more everything. It's a higher grade. And they'd go, oh, okay. And that would make sense. And then all of a sudden now we've got finishes and we've got some different aging techniques and stuff. And all of a sudden now it's getting more complicated, and it's fun. But to your point it's selling that one as opposed to selling the other ones has been my discussion more with some of my bourbon friends, because everyone gets, coming off St. Patrick's Day, is every bourbon fan for one day is curious about Irish whiskey to go like, so what's this Irish stuff?
Fair point. And Kate, thanks for bringing that up. That's a great point. I mean, most consumers, their experience with Irish whiskey is this lighter style, this more kind of Jameson, this really honestly consumable, spirit. And again, but we have these bold expressions when it comes down to it. When people think Irish whiskey, they're looking for something that's again, easy drinking, smooth, and not really complicated in all honesty. So thanks for bringing that up, Kate. That's a great point.
And I'd be very happy, Hunter, if you guys could kick out some of the really low-priced ones that I think are obnoxious and garish that happen to do with MMA fighters, which that bottle is crap. I've had it. But I think that if people are into other brands that are good, that are also sub 20, I think there's a brand that's real close to that. Could hopefully kind of bring people into it. I know that when I bring a bottle that initials are RB and it's usually a 12-year, they're just blown away.
Yeah. And that's a very fine whiskey, by the way.
But these things are also exceptional. I mean, everybody should have, if you had these 4 bottles on your shelf, you're going to be able to make anybody happy.
That's what we like to hear, and that's what we're trying to do. So
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with Redbreast 12. Just as an Irish whiskey fan and someone who represents much different brands, that's a definitely high quality, well made whiskey, no doubt about it.
Well, and I would add, going to what David said, as well as with the poll, you see even across the board with the last 3 expressions, and I mean you're basically appealing to people that have certain things that they really like. So you might have, if you're a big bourbon fan, that you got the double oak. If you're a sherry fan, okay, then you got the redhead. If you like more of a little bit of musty, funky kind of stuff, then you go to the single pot. And so it's cool that you have all these different expressions. And for the whiskey fanatics, I mean, like I said, I like all 3. I voted for the single pot still. I thought it was just unique, a little bit of that funk that I like, and it was really good. So, but I love what you guys are doing there. It's definitely a lot of fun.
Appreciate that. Well, fair enough. I won't hold you guys up too much. I'll kind of dive into some of the more cast finish items. So just kind of preface this. The next three are three of the four annual releases we have. So again, the only exception being the Japanese cask, which hopefully next time around we'll be able to jump into. But we'll continue to do all four of these annually. What you'll start to see starting next year is really more of a quarterly release schedule. We're not sure how it's going to work out, but you'll kind of see one of these come out every single quarter, and that's just to give more availability out there to people and allow accounts to not have to choose one, but be able to get involved with all of them. But starting off, it's the Marsala cask. So that's kind of our really longest standing cask finish whiskey that we have. It's a partnership between us and the Florio winery down in Marsala. If you don't know where Marsala is, it's on kind of the northwestern tip of Sicily. It's a really well-known, long-standing winery down there. That's really well known for its high-quality Marsala wines, rather. And we were able to buy their casks from them. What this gives, so just to preface the rest of these, especially these next two or three, or really the next two, Bernard Walsh, our proprietor and our founder, he has a bit of a sweet tooth. So you get a little bit more of kind of these kind of dessert notes coming through. With the Marsala cask, I get a little bit more kind of those caramelized apple notes, a little bit more of that kind of honey sweetness. I get that even amped up even more in the ice wine cask, kind of that raw honey sweetness. But for this, I get more of that kind of honey syrup, a little bit of earth coming through as well. Kind of as I taste it and smell it. And then you definitely get a bit of a salinity too on the finish on the back end. I don't know if it's the barrels. I don't know if it's just, again, kind of the coastline of Sicily being influenced into this, but you definitely get a bit of salinity, a bit of a salty kind of finish, and it just makes you want to have another sip. And that's what, for me, kind of creates that savory and really delicious and enjoyable experience with this whole whiskey.
I think you're right with that salinity. It's like people don't think of putting salt onto a sweet tart or anything like that. But well, I guess people do that now all the time with salted caramels. But honestly, throw a little salt onto something sweet, and it can kind of just make everything go pow. And this is wonderful. I've had a bunch of Marsala, finishes, and they're fine. But this is head and shoulders above those. Wow, this is wonderful.
Good stuff. Glad to hear that. Yeah, no, it's again, the age of the whiskey definitely helps, but also just quality cask as well. I mean, Florio, again, being a story producer right there on the seed. And again, I appreciate you reinforcing my idea of salinity. I'm a sucker for sherry cask, but also salinity as well. So it just creates a really nice, well-balanced whiskey to boot.
Yeah, I bought that Marsala one when I was down in Texas and just happened to see it on the shelf and had, I live in Michigan, so we don't get any of these. And so just happened to see it and was like, oh, Marsala. Because Marsala and Madeira are the two classic finishes that I love that don't get used often enough. And many times when they are used, aren't done well. But like this one just blew me away when I opened it up the first time because it is so sweet, but it gets you right to the edge of being too sweet. It's got enough dryness. It's got enough salinity to it. It's got enough everything to hold you back just from the edge. So you're not just, drinking sugar water.
That's what we're going for. Not drinking sugar water for sure. No, but I appreciate that. And Jason, up in Michigan, just because it is a control state, it's a little more difficult, but this is specifically to you, but you'll be getting more stuff from us in the next year, actually. It's like our number 9 state, and we had a good meeting with their folks there. So you'll be getting more things coming your direction.
Go us.
Jason is responsible for making Michigan number 9?
Yeah, I mean, I drank probably half of it.
We'll keep doing it. Keep doing it because you get all the special stuff on top of it now, you know?
Yeah, well, Hunter Jason has a very large following, as I understand, has it. So very active in the whiskey groups. But we're most happy that he's active here.
So
Good
I
stuff.
noticed that this one is at 45. Has it always been at 45? Because I think the Japanese was a cast strength.
Yeah, so most of the cast finishes are about 45 or 46. The Japanese is the one exception at that 55%.
Okay, so you only have two expressions that are cast strength, which is the cast strength and the Japanese release.
Correct.
Okay. I thought maybe I had to like triple check to make sure I wasn't naming them wrong or like putting it wrong on the label.
No, and this one, yeah, this one's also non-chill filtered, but it is at that 45%. It's been before 46. It's not always it's around 45 or 46 every vintage.
Gotcha.
But yeah, not actual cast strength on this guy.
Vadim
But
being
is
a
there-
classic proof chaser, Vadim. Just
Well, I
enjoy the
apologize, that's just the way I am. I was hoping for 70, but
That's what Americans want, big, heavy hitting cast strength whiskeys.
that's right.
Not to say that that's you guys, just in general. That's where the market is right now. Okie dokie. Let's see. We're on to the ice wine finish. Yeah.
Oh, you were talking about chapters, and before I forget, I wanted to throw this question out there. So when I was looking at the lineup, obviously single pot still is labeled as chapter number 10, but I see 7, and I can think of Japanese being the 8th. What 2 chapters are we missing that are no longer around, or that we never got to us?
Let me think of this. So 1 copper pot, 2 redhead, 3 double oak, 4. I think is Marsala.
Yeah, I think it's Marsala.
Yeah, 5 would be Japanese, I believe. 6 would be cast. No, 5 would be cast strength. 6 would be Japanese. So we're missing what, 8, 9?
Yeah.
Good question. It might be. So they did. We did a seaweed IPA finish cask for Dick Max, the pub in Ireland. That might be one. I'd have to get back to the other. I actually can't remember. But
So if we're trying to build the whole
appreciate
collection,
that.
we're screwed.
So yeah, you won't. The seaweed IPA was a single cask whiskey that they did for. I don't know if you guys have been to Dick Max. It's also in Dingle, Ireland. Lovely, one of my favorite pubs of all time. If you get a chance to go there, do it. Awesome place. But we do roughly 1 whiskey with them every year, whether that's Irishman or Writer's Tears. And so I think 2 of them have gone down there exclusively. That's my best guess, but I'll follow up with you, Vadim.
It sounds good.
Alrighty. So get into the lovely ice wine. Again, it's this one. I think it's come a long way too. So if you bought it right off the bat, I'd back in the fall, I'd give it another taste. It's totally changed. I think there's just become a nice balance to it. It's a little bit less astringent than it was before, but there's definitely some acid there. More of that kind of stone fruit note in the front end, and definitely in the nose. More of that apricot, peach, white peach kind of note coming through. But you still get that backbone of pot still. You still get that spice bumping it up in the back end. Again, and that was with the Marsala cask too. One thing that I think that's nice that's common across our whiskeys is really that backbone of kind of more of that spice, that pot still spice, still coming through despite the cask finish. So, but it is almost like a honeysuckle too. I get like a little bit of honeysuckle in the nose, and kind of that more, even like a reduced honey on the palate as well. And there's this like incredible tropical fruit essence for me, not to influence anybody's palate, but I get this like wonderful tropical fruit finish, kind of more of almost like a mango. Is what I'm picking up, but maybe I'm crazy.
Or juicy fruit.
Yeah, juicy fruit's a good descriptor actually. I like that a lot.
Papaya.
Jane, what was that? Was that you, Jane? Sorry.
Yeah, papaya.
Oh, papaya. Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's not quite, it's that same flavor as mango, but it's not as sweet.
Yeah, a little bit more reserved.
Yeah, it's a little meatier.
Yeah, for
Really
sure.
interesting
For sure.
flavor. This is great.
So again,
Fun
this is all done in Inniskillen ice wine cask. So if you guys don't know Inniskillen, they're kind of like one of the top producers of ice wine in Canada, up in Ontario. So that's kind of our partnership. That's going to be how the same cask we'll be using for the next few years. Depending on who you ask, I would say that not that I'm an ice wine connoisseur, but I would say that Canada probably has some of the best, most highest quality ice wines coming out in the world. Obviously, Scandinavia would beg to differ in a lot of ways, and some other German producers. But as far as the swale, terroir, all that stuff, Canada for me is one of the better places where the origins for ice wine. And in Inniskillen within there is one of the most highly regarded producers of that as well. If you know their Vidal, that's the same. That actual wine is what we're getting all these barrels from, that varietal. So 100% of that. They make several different wines, but it's that one specifically that we're getting these barrels from.
And correct me if I'm wrong, ice wine is wine made from grapes after a frost where the grapes are frozen, unfrozen. Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. So they're late harvest wines. And one nice thing about ice wine in general is that you get like a sweet wine without having all the alcohol that you find in port and some other sherries and things like that. But one thing it does is that when those grapes freeze, they lose a lot of their liquid, so it becomes more concentrated flavor. So you get a lot more intensity in the grape and actually the end product as well. So yeah, they leave the grapes on the vine. Probably, I don't know if it's that late after typical harvest as far as like what California or anyone's used to, but because the frost happens earlier up there, they do get, again, more concentration in that fruit.
And sure. I'm not a wine guy, so I apologize for asking such a simple question, but I'm assuming based on the color, it's a white wine and not a red wine, or am I?
Yeah, these ones are particular white grapes. It's Vidal is a varietal of this specific cask, but they do about, I want to say 2 or 3 different varietals up there. Again, I'm not an ice wine expert, but that's about as much as I know. But I believe it's Vidal grape, and it is a white grape.
Well, you knew more than me, so for me, you're an expert. So just like live that.
There you go. Well, I'll come back with more information next time too. How about that?
I think in general, Jordan, ice wines are not deeply colored because the color comes from letting them soak in their skins and their musts. So you don't do that. I don't think they do that with the ice wine.
Yeah, and I was literally just deducing it from the color of the,
yeah.
Anything finished in a red wine cask would be more influenced color-wise, I would assume.
Yeah.
So
sorry Hunter. Sorry if I missed this. Is this available in the US?
Yes, it is. It is currently available in the US. Let me look up. I'll be able to find probably an account in your area. Are you down in LA area, Brian?
Yeah, Valley.
Okay, cool. Okay, fair enough. If you give me just until the end of this, and I'll find a place for you to go buy it.
Awesome, thank you.
Again, pretty special expression there. First year that we've had it out. You'll see it again late this year. And again, as I said, we're starting to sort out how these cast finishes roll out quarter to quarter. This year will come out kind of H2 with the rest of these, but starting in 2023 will be more scaled. So this will probably be around the springtime. So right about now, I'll be getting released next year again. All right. Geez, are we on the last expression? Are we already there?
I think so. Vadim usually likes to take a picture.
Vadim does like to take a picture. Well, yeah. Let me invite everyone who's not on camera to jump on camera. Oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, come on back on camera.
Hi, everyone. hopefully this doesn't freeze and kick everyone off. Yeah, thank you to everyone. Jesus, this light's powerful. There we go. The darker it is, the better I look. All right. Cheers to everyone. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you to Hunter for getting us together and for the wonderful whiskeys from Writer's Tears. Raise a glass. Cheers, everyone. Got it. Thank you. Oh, lovely faces. Everybody's smiling today. It's a good day.
We're drinking Writer's Tears. Said.
Right, there you go. Love that. That's a great response.
Jane Kilkenny has loved everything so far, and Kate.
Yeah, but the last one's rye. Just there.
Oh shit!
The late April Fool's joke.
Too late.
Stop
I've
recording.
already tasted it, and I know it's not.
It's a peated rye. That's what it is.
Irish peated rye. There we go.
Bite your tongue, Kate. Bite your tongue.
So I don't know if we'll ever see them here, but we do have a few peated casks laying down right now under Writer's Tears. I don't know if we'll ever have a release, but it's not peated malt. For the record, it is just peated casks that we're resting in right now.
So I just want to say, I don't need to drink this one. I could just sit here all night nosing this one. I don't know why, but this one just is the nose on it is fantastic to me.
Again, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. And with again, this whiskey, it's crazy what cask strength can do to just copper pot. I mean, it's so much more complex. You get so many more layers in the flavor, not only on the nose, but also on the palate. And it just creates this really lovely, lovely experience. I mean, again, cask strength being what it is, you're not going to have a ton of it. Or, you know, if you are, good on you and do it again. But yeah, it just being that same core copper pot whiskey, it just totally changes in cask strength form. And it's something that we just are really proud of. And it's actually between this and the Irishman, we are the first Irish producer in over 50 years to actually make a cask strength whiskey. Of course, these aren't our first vintages, and a lot more people are doing it now, but we were the first people to actually, in over 50 years, offer a cask strength Irish whiskey back in 2013. Wasn't available here in the US, but it was available globally. But that's just something that, again, Bernard himself wanted to make sure that he was curating and coming out with. Given what's happening in American whiskey, he's kind of saw the writing on the wall and started creating this vintage release. So just, again, that nose, like I just get a huge bump of more of that kind of, like almost that pot still spice becomes almost peppery, like a white pepper, and look like a little bit more of like a ginger kind of coming, like that ginger is just like amplified from that copper pot.
Anybody know the price of the
About 160, roughly there. It comes in a really fancy box too.
It's spectacular. I mean, this is
so we get about, call it 300 cases in the U.S. every year. Obviously, it's an allocated item. We are out of the 2021. We'll soon be getting the 2022. It'll be in, you know, again, I'll call it a hunter green package. So the package itself, the actual box changes color every year. You know, I know people said like cocoa nibs or cocoa powder. I definitely get some dark chocolate or some sort of chocolatiness coming through.
How do you choose this? How many of these do you release? How many bottles do you release each year, and how do you choose which to keep at cask strength?
So globally, we produce and release about 8,000, just under 8,000 bottles globally across the world.
Okay, so this is not a single cask.
They are bottled as single casks, but they are proof down to the same proof across the board. So if you look on the bottle, it'll actually tell you what bottle and what cask it's from. So, but again, across the board, they're all proofed to the same cask strength. So it's like cask strength is kind of, it's not like barrel proof. You know, all those people use these terms, but typically everything is slightly proof down from like a lot of times 62 down to like in the mid 50s. There are exceptions to the rule, but in general, cask strength doesn't necessarily mean it's coming straight out of the cask.
So Hunter, to follow up on Kate's question, if they are all individual casks and they are labeled on the bottle as such, that means that from each barrel they could be a slightly different.
Yeah, technically, yeah. Technically every barrel could be slightly different. That's definitely true.
But do you strive to try to get some consistency for the 8,000 bottles that you put out there?
Of course. So every year, Bernard probably chooses. Again, I don't know the exact process, but he chooses individual barrels that he finds meet kind of the same criteria across the board throughout the racking house.
And where are these racked at? In
Carlo.
Okay.
So while the spirit's being distilled in
so when you say up, do you mean in the mountains?
No, so it's right outside the town of Carlo, kind of between Carlo and Kilkenny, right between about an hour and a half south of Dublin. So it goes from County Cork up about 2.5, 3 hours.
I interrupted, David.
I forget what I was talking about.
Evidently, hey Jane, evidently you can get a whole lot of this because it's right by you in Kilkenny.
Yeah. I have a county, a city, a castle, and a beer.
And a design center named after you.
Yeah, not after me, but yeah.
So, fun fact about Kilkenny, it's the only inland Irish city. Everything else is on the coast. And that goes back to medieval times because it's really not that large of a city. But it is kind of the home of Irish whiskey historically. Yeah, if you didn't know Kilkenny, actually, I think in the next 12 months, if you can go there, you can see the original charter for what Irish whiskey is at the castle as part of an exhibit. I think it's like the whatever anniversary of either the castle or Irish whiskey or something in Kilkenny. But Kilkenny is really actually the cultural and historical heart of where Irish whiskey originated.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be there in time. So yay.
Well, you can get into the country without literally anything, just a ticket. So.
Yeah.
You guys have any questions? Anything I can try to think about what's on the horizon.
That was going to be my question. You guys are coming up with so many experimental stuff. What's next?
Yeah, we'll probably do a couple single barrels, or we'll get released pretty sporadically and pretty limitedly. Honestly, probably retailer specific. But we've only just now kind of got our cask annual release going with Japanese ice wine, cask strength, and also the Marsala. So we're going to hold on to those for a while and just make sure that we're doing those well and keep on releasing those annually. We have, again, up to 10 really in the US, we'll have 8 expressions. That's a lot when it comes down to it that are being released annually. But we'll have a few things. We may do an anejo barrel. It's one thing we're looking at, but we're not counting on it. We're going to see how that whiskey actually turns out. Because I don't think, to my knowledge, that any other Irish whiskey producer is doing anything in a tequila barrel. So that'll be one thing.
I really want you to do one porter barrel.
We've done an IPA cask. We've done a stout cask years ago. That was, again, a lot of the beer stuff ends up going out to just Ireland exclusives, unfortunately. Like Dick Max I talked about, we do an annual release with them. We've done a couple different beer casks. I would love to do something like that.
So we just need to go to
but we'll see.
Hijack a couple barrels, go into the local.
I was just there last week. I'll be there again in October. So I'll see if I can get a carry-on big enough to hide a cask in.
Just say it's your support animal.
That's right. That's right. It's my service animal is right along right side of the it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
No, I identify this barrel as my therapeutic support animal. So because I have identified it, you cannot challenge it.
That's right. Especially if you're traveling to California, right?
You know what they'll say? They'll say that's fine. Just make sure it wears a mask.
Good stuff. Any other questions, you guys? Anything I can help answer? Whether that's just Irish whiskey or our portfolio in general, I'm happy to jump in and give a little context if need be.
So I think I've looked up the Walshes before. I mean, I know how it's not, I think. And apparently, so there a lot of the stuff has been distilled down at Middleton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as I recall, they're bringing things up to be distilled now. They've built a distillery now. Finally, is that right?
So that's where it gets complicated. So we used to have a joint venture with Disaronno of the Amaretto fame. And,
that's right. I remember.
Back in about 2016, we divested from that due to some. So they also make the Busker as a whiskey. Hopefully, I think we're still recording, so I might get in trouble. But anyways, that wasn't necessarily a happy marriage. So we've always been producing at Middleton. We're continuing to produce at Middleton to this day, and we're looking right now for another distillery to either build or buy.
It's just sorry, I got my stories mixed up, and I'm sorry to bring up bad times. But I appreciate it.
No worries. It doesn't hurt me, so it's all good.
And then you all were just recently bought out, but it sounds like they're mostly going to take and help with distribution and more hands-off on production.
Yeah, so I work for the importer. They were just bought by Amber. Bernard's still heavily involved. He's the guy who's doing all the meetings, making all the deals, and also still tasting every Friday. But it's business as usual. Nothing's changed. They're not really, deeply involved with the production or distribution of the whiskey at this point. So,
Hunter, who is the distributor for your on-premise?
Southern Wine Spirits.
Okay, because I'm just kind of thinking that if you had this as a lineup, if you wanted to do a tasting at a restaurant or a bar or someplace, this would be spectacular.
Yeah, we've done it, and we'll continue to do this year as events start to come back. We've done a lot of work also with 7 Grand down there, and also in San Diego, Austin, and Denver. So we do some other things like that where they're in person. I'll let you guys know when we're doing some sort of things like that. But again, that's just kind of starting to come back. But one thing that since we became the importer, Writer Sears has been focused on in general is the on-premise and servicing that kind of cocktail crowd. That's something that we as an importer really strive to do and really have a lot of pride in. We do Luxardo cherries, we do all this other kind of Luxardo maraschino, we do all these other kind of cocktail culture events, and we're trying to get more of ourselves ingrained in that culture. And sometimes it takes a price as well as far as getting things on the menus, and we're working on making sure that we're a part of that crowd as well.
Well, I do think that if somebody's trying, to get into, trying to get into whiskeys, it would be, these would be really amazing because you can start off so subtly and so easily into a whiskey. And then you can kind of just dive into the different sort of cask finishes that really offer you very unique expressions. So I just kept thinking, it's like, wow, if I was at a really nice restaurant or bar and I want to do a whiskey flight, this would be really exceptional.
Yeah. Love to hear that. And it's, again, something we're working on. Something that has been a focus of the portfolio before, but definitely a priority now.
Yeah, I think one other thing that wasn't mentioned when we had the cask strength is how easily it went down. It's hard to believe it's 55%, really. It's, I could easily have, that could easily knock me on my ass. It went down.
Between that and the Japanese cask, again, not to dangle something else in front of you, but between those two, it's like they're dangerously delicious, as I say. It's like they can get you in a lot of trouble very quickly because they go down easy. They don't taste like they're 54, 55% whiskeys, and they're just they're killer. They're absolutely killer. So thank you for that, Kate.
Said
Well,
8,000 a year for the cast strength. Who do we write to get 30,000 bottles a year produced?
So
I mean,
8,000 is global, and we get, let me just do them, about 1,800 bottles here in the U.S. I can give you Bernard's email if you'd like to write him.
I'd love to. That was incredible.
Oh, good. Again, that's one of those things where you taste Copper Pot and you taste that, and Copper Pot's great whiskey for $40, but again, the cast strength is just, it's unbelievable. It's one of my favorite of the whole lineup, regardless of anything. It's just that whiskey, undiluted, really. So.
And so when does that the cast strength usually hit the market out here? I mean, obviously COVID changes everything, but getting back to normal, what would you expect for that?
Yeah, so you should start to see it around September all the way through the holidays, really is when the cast strength should be released. So in Ireland, if you look at Walsh press releases, the 22 vintage just came out about, I want to say in like maybe last week, it may have been Monday. In Ireland and the EU, we get it about probably 5-6 months later, just because of current, like typically it's probably 3 months, but just all the logistics delays these days, we're looking at kind of September, October, November, December is when that will be available. And we're probably not going to change that. Even if going forward, even if logistics get better, that cadence kind of seems to work for us and allowing room for the other cast strengths to be, or the cast finishes to be released other times of the year.
And I'll say, after all of that, I went back to the first dram of the night, and I was like, wow, the Copper Pot is buttery sweet and quite good. Even after all of that other stuff and going back to it, I was like, wow, that's quite tasty.
Absolutely. Again, it's what built us as a brand here in the U.S. and globally. And again, so delicious Irish whiskey, no matter what.
And Hunter, kind of diverging. Do
Yeah.
you have like merchandise, swag, sweatshirts, t-shirts?
Hopefully, when we get this distillery built, whenever that is. But for now. Again, I promised Vadim, and did you ever get the beanies and the Yeti mugs?
No, sir.
Okay, well that's awkward. I've been in Ireland the last week, and I've had the Walsh team in town for the last few days. So Vadim, whatever you want to do with them, I got 2 beanies and 10 Yeti mugs coming your way. They haven't reached there yet, so that's about as much swag as we have right now. We had more going into St. Patrick's Day, but obviously, like we had enamel pins and some other little tchotchkes. But for now, there's nothing to purchase, unfortunately.
Well, I would ask that you do sweatshirts, because now I have had to purchase another whiskey-themed sweatshirt of a Tennessee producer, just because there's not that much swag out there. I know it's a pain in the ass and the logistical issues to kind of offer that stuff, but it would be fun to kind of support the brand and kind of get the name out there in any way that we can.
Shoot me a separate note, David. I'll find something for you. As a bald guy to bald guy, I'll get you at least something to warm your head.
I would like that very much, even though I am in Southern California, which is okay.
I decided to take my hat off just to.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah, there's a few bald guys here.
I live in Michigan where it's actually cold.
Oh,
that's true. All right. Look, maybe not this go around, but I'll figure something out for you guys, at least on the next go around, maybe an Irishman guys or otherwise. So,
Hunter, are you on our group, or can you put your email in the chat or send?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I'm on the group, but I'll drop it down here.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to share it with every bald guy in our group, which is about half of us. So
it's a good group.
No, I'm kidding.
You guys have, excuse me, do you guys have any kind of like tour when you're in country? Any place that you can visit, or is it all just?
So we're still working on that. One thing you can go is the Irish Whiskey History or Irish Whiskey History Museum. You can taste our whiskeys there, and we are a part of the tour, but we don't have an actual distillery you can go to and taste that yet.
Yet. I like the yet.
Look, it's a huge priority of ours, and it's huge. It's actually pretty much what Bernard's working on exclusively right now.
Gotcha.
Tony, when were you in Dublin last?
18.
Okay. Well, not that you should need to go back, but it is they've totally revamped the tour there as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually going to Scotland. We leave here 30 April and we'll be back in the 9th.
Are you going to Ireland as well, or just Scotland?
No, just Scotland on this trip.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll miss you there, but be sure to come back for the tour.
Oh, my wife loves Dublin, so I'm sure we will be back.
And if you do make it out to, you have my email now. If you do make it out to the Dingle coastline, we do have a distillery down there, so happy to help you accommodate there as well.
Okay, thank you.
I was there in 2016 and managed to get out to Dingle, although I didn't quite get to the distillery. We got stopped at the pub.
Yeah, that'll happen. Some of the best pubs I've been to are in Dingle.
Yeah.
Beautiful part of the world.
We went to a pub and then ended up going to a Kaylee, so we were pretty much set for the night.
Do you remember which pub you were in?
Dick Max.
Okay, yeah, there you go, Dick Max, of course, absolutely.
It's such a great selection of whiskey, and all at a wonderful price. So yeah.
Good stuff.
Remember last time I was in Ireland, I was driving through the countryside and I was informed that what makes a town in Ireland is 2 bars and a church, and you got a town.
That's absolutely true. But yeah,
we did do a poll of all the whole lineup tonight. Are you curious to see what the #1 favorite was of everything involved?
I am.
What do you think is the favorite?
Part of me wants to say double oak, part of me wants to say Marsala cask, part of me wants to say cask strength too. I don't know. It's a tough role.
You, sir, are a master at your job. I will tell you that.
Yes.
Okay.
It is cask strength, but it's right on its heels is Marsala cask. So you call the two expressions.
By the way, the 2 times we've had cask strength here, it's won both times, like far and away. So there you go. It's good. It's fun to see. Double Oak got 0% on this one. There you go.
There wasn't that many votes to go around, so it's impressive that there was that much of a spread.
I have a complaint. All of my samples are gone.
Oh.
That's the problem.
More samples are available in 700 ml samples at the local shop that you favor. And if Ryder Sears is not carried there, please let them know that you'd like it carried.
Please shoot me a text, call, whatever, and I'll get somebody on it.
For sure.
I believe you will, Hunter. And as Vadim has done in the past and continues to do, to bring us really wonderful expressions, introducing us to things that we may not have otherwise enjoyed, which I think is a testament to the virtual tastings. So thank you, Vadim. I did not get a chance to say that in the beginning, but I do want to say that we always appreciate the effort and work that you put into this. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
He crushes me over the expression. He's like, why not do them all? You got something that's not available in the U.S., let's have it. So he definitely pushes me and makes me better for it too. So much appreciated, Vadim.
A very strong advocate. We are very fortunate to be able to enjoy the fruits of his labors.
Yeah.
Hey,
well,
so
thank you.
For one time, I would say to Vadim Perlovsky, cheers, buddy.
I would, but
appreciate
I don't have anything
you
in my glass.
Oh man.
Well, thank you all so much. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thanks again, everyone.